Fired up to start off the week with another All 32 pod. Mike Giardi, Will Parkinson alongside. It is March 17th, Monday, 12:32. We are taping this. As always, this show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. We decided today that we would do moves in free agency that may have changed the approach in the draft for certain teams. But before we get there, some big money doled out overnight and this morning. Let's start with Stingley. Why am I Derek Stingley? Geez, I almost forgot his name there for a second. The cornerback for the Houston Texans, 3 years, $90 million, 89 of it guaranteed. So once again, the Texans like to push the Danielle Hunter. Was all but like $2 million guaranteed here, all but $1 million guaranteed for Derek Stingley. But I pose this to you, Will, because you are looking at Sauce Gardner, also eligible for this extension. Now you have the J.C. Horn extension, which set the market or reset the market, and now Stingley resets the market. Sauce obviously going to be looking for north of that.
Yeah, this was a disaster for the Jets, in my opinion. I'm not like it's not the look, it is what it is.
They waited too long.
This was like what's frustrating to me, and I'm going to talk about this on my Jet stuff, is that Sauce has not only retweeted me but like 5 other people about this. I literally tweeted Sauce 4 for 120 or no 4 for 105, I believe, which was going to be whatever the 26 a year, or whatever it is, and that was going to reset the market, get it done before Stingley, who wanted 4 for 100 as of last year. He obviously had a way better year and was an all-pro this year, so like the number went up. Sauce has shown his interest in wanting to be extended. The number was very easy to get done. He's a superstar. He's proven it. The Jets normally don't give the extension after 3 years, and I totally understand that thinking in a lot of ways for normal circumstances. But these are like 2 guys who you're changing eras. It'd be good to go into the next era with like, hey, here's our 24 and 25-year-old franchise cornerstones locked into deals. We have our new head coach, new GM, like gives the fan base something because like, hey, it isn't the best. It's not the easiest for a fan base to go, wow, we want Devontae and Rodgers and all these guys kind of walk out the door. It's just like now, what, Sauce going to be 4 for 120? He's going to get, or is he going to get 3 for 91? Or I don't know. I will say this feels a little like the Browns have been doing this where they keep giving out these deals that kind of totally screw the market. This kind of screwed the corner market significantly, right? Like Ramsey got extended last year. We've obviously seen Surtain and all these guys, and like it was like 4 for 96 with 70 guaranteed. It was like a 3-year deal. This was like true 3-year deal. All of it's guaranteed. And it'd be really interesting to see if this starts to change. Mike, I talked about this with you on the last episode. They did exactly what we talked about. I don't need the 100 million. I want all 90 of it. Like I want to make sure I'm getting every penny I'm getting extended. So yeah, this affects it. It is interesting. The cornerback market, like I said, is now in the 30s. This was a market that, was kind of in that in-between of that and linebacker, where like the low 20s, high teens for majority of these guys. So not anymore. The Jets, they got lucky with Garrett and the Tee Higgins signing, which we'll get to. But from a Sauce perspective, yeah, I mean, this probably cost them $5 million a year minimum.
It's interesting as we talk about sort of the exploding cornerback market and how it relates to Travis Hunter, right? Where I think Paul Kaharski from has his own website, covers the Titans, used to be a national writer. Paul does a great job down there. He had sources saying that Travis Hunter, if push came to shove and a team forced him to pick, that he would pick wide receiver. And the reason is obvious, right? Because the money for wide receivers keeps going up and up and up. Well, guess what? Now all of a sudden the cornerback market is coming up, and it's not quite at the level, as we'll talk about in a second here, for wide receivers, but it's starting to encroach on that territory. And I wonder if he's sitting there wherever he is right now, getting ready for the draft, saying, maybe cornerback isn't so bad. Maybe that's something that I want to do. But you mentioned Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. That came overnight. We've been debating whether or not this made sense for Cincinnati, but Joe Burrow basically put it on ownership. Mike Brown, the general manager, Duke Tobin, was like, you can't be letting these guys walk out the door. Jamar's his guy from back at LSU, but obviously has a real good relationship with Tee Higgins. These guys are both, still young prime players currently. 4 years, $161 million for Chase, 112 of that guaranteed. By the way, that's now the highest annual average salary for a non-quarterback, resetting the market that Myles Garrett just got a week ago. And again, proving that the Bengals and their philosophy here of like pushing this to the very end cost them significant money. Should have got the deal done last year, didn't. Price keeps going up.
What do you want? 34 last year, 35 in camp?
And then they made the declaration at the combine, we're going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback. Like, why would you say that? Because again, the moment the Garrett thing happens, okay, well now it's north of 40. And then Tee Higgins, who we've debated whether or not he's a number one or whatnot. Well, they're paying him like he is one. 4 for 115. And the first 2 years of the contract are guaranteed. I don't have the exact numbers on that just yet, but it's sizable.
What would the Patriots have paid Tee Higgins, you think?
I mean, I think it's kind of funny when you think about this because they went to almost 30 million for Godwin, 28 to 30 million. I think they would have preferred Godwin over Higgins, but I think push comes to shove because of Godwin's, again,
he fits them a lot. Yeah.
Fit. It's the professionalism. Not that Tee Higgins isn't a professional, but like you have a 7-8 year track record with Godwin of like, he plays when he can, he's had a couple major injuries, but he's rehabbed those injuries, whatever. Where Higgins has had the soft tissue injury stuff, which Mike Vrabel not a big fan of. Not that any coach is a big fan of, but that said, if Tee Higgins was available, they would have pushed it to 32 because they're in a position where they have to. But again, not only is this changing the wide receiver market, but as we talk about Garrett Wilson and another deal that we talked about, the Jets should probably get this done, good or bad, for New York when they sit down with Garrett and try to hammer out an extension.
The Tee Higgins one actually, I think, helps them. I had Garrett pegged at like 4 for 120. I think Garrett's a better player than Tee Higgins is, and he's certainly younger and more durable. If T's getting 20, what does he get? I mean, it's really 29 or 28 and high change.
Yeah.
Can the Jets go to Garrett and say 4 for 120 like I thought, whereas DK was, I think, 33 million, so maybe they split the difference there. This one I think is better for the Jets. It establishes a guy who's a similar type of production, range. DK as well, but Higgins obviously a bit younger. This isn't an extension. This was, well, I guess technically an extension. This was a guy who's was obviously a free agent or tagged. The Bengals are just Mike. We've talked about it like 800 times, and I saw a lot of this is who they are. They're going to outscore teams and the whole thing. They have two good, awesome. They have one generational receiver. They have one really good receiver. And they have a really good quarterback. Right. It's not like they have the best offense we've ever seen. And it's like the running games. This isn't the 99 Rams where like elite offensive line, MVP level quarterback, MVP level running back, Hall of Fame receiver 1, Hall of Fame receiver 2, Pro Bowl slot. Like the Rams in 99, that's how the other Patriots. It's every position on that team, on that offense, was as good as it got in the league. And This was a different era where, like, they're scoring 30, 35 a game in an era where it's, like, impossible to score.
Right.
I mean, I saw a tweet before. It's like the Bengals are going to lose every game 97 to 94. And I'm not, like, saying that they shouldn't have re-signed Jamar Chase by any means. I just felt like Tee Higgins should have been traded last year at the deadline. You got your second round pick, or you got a first, maybe a late one from team, or a second and another 2, or whatever it was. And hey, it stinks, but like, we're going to go draft the guy who can give us 85% of T, and we'll use the other picks we got to address our offensive line or address our defense and all this different stuff. Like, their offensive line's not good. Like, That's a huge Orlando Brown, we're going to keep doing this experiment of Orlando Brown being good or not. A newsflash, we've got the answer. And again, hopefully Amarius Mims ends up being a really good player, and Chase Brown they like, and they have some pieces on the offense. I'm not saying that like they can't go score a lot of points in a division that's really difficult, but so now they're going to give Trey Hendrickson the money. It seems like you're going to have 4 guys. I know the cap's gone up, but like hasn't gone up that much. We're going to have all of our assets invested in 4 guys, and we're going to just be this team that like. Every year we're restructuring Joe Burrow, and every year we're restructuring Jamar Chase. And I don't know. I felt like this was a chance to, like, we talked about this during the year, to buffalo it and reset it on the fly. We have the elite quarterback. We have one elite player we want to pay. Everybody else, we're going to like accumulate assets. We've actually drafted well at points. I mean, argue with that, I guess, with Cincinnati. How much
No, there was a good when they
they were
the 2020, 2021, like
they
bam.
drafted well, not just Chase and Burrow, but they were
Yep.
drafting good players, etc. I just don't know if I love the strategy. I would have prioritized Hendrickson over T, just because, again, you got to have someone that can influence the game on defense. And something against Tee Higgins, I just feel like the Patriots would have given you a top 40 pick. Like, you would have had 2 or 3 top 50 picks in a draft that actually might have benefited you. You could have gone and gotten a Jaden Higgins to replace Tee Higgins at the pick 34. You could have gotten in round 1, maybe you take your Will Johnson to be your superstar corner with Trey Hendrickson, and like you build the defense around your corner, your edge rusher on offense. It's Jamar and Jaden Higgins. And with their other second round pick, they draft Tyleik Williams, and he's going to be a run stuffer for them. And it's like, ooh, Chris Jenkins, Trey Hendrickson, and Tyleik Williams in the inside. And now we're going to go outside. Will Johnson's going to be our guy. And on offense, like Jaden Higgins is going to be 80% of T. And honestly, like, could be a better player maybe down the line. I don't know. I just didn't feel like there was a really clear way to do this. And I just feel like they went with the pressure of like Madden.
I'll go one further than you, because I would have tried to trade Trey Higgins. Not T Higgins, excuse me, Trey Hendrickson. I combined the two there. I'm having problems with names apparently today, because he's on the wrong side of 30 now. And look, he was awesome last year. Like, he was truly like the only guy on their defense that produced at a high level. And he did it with the attention of 2 blockers, he was immense. 17 and a half sacks last year. But it's like, we weren't good with you defensively. We're older. We have holes to fill. Maybe we're better off again. Could you have gotten a 1 for him? Probably someone at that, like, would Buffalo say, oh, we'll take Trey Hendrickson for a couple of years because we're in that window where we think we can win now, which Cincinnati obviously feels the same way. But I think it's dicey to throw multiple guaranteed years at a player on the wrong side of 30 at that position. Generally don't hold up well. We've seen it with, TJ Watt starting to slow down. I question whether Myles Garrett, even though, again, he was awesome last year, if that was the right decision to make it, especially when you consider their ecosystem in Cleveland. Like, they should have just said, screw it. We are hitting the hard reset. We're going to eat the money on Watson, trade Garrett, and just start over. But they're prolonging it. And Cincinnati is sort of in this place where, man, this draft, they better freaking nail it, because they have a bunch of holes that they can't fill any other way but in the draft. And hope that Al Golden, their new defensive coordinator, can somehow find the magic touch.
Yeah, that Lou Anarumo couldn't find. Magic.
Right, exactly. And remember, Lou was the freaking genius for like 3 years, and like they were just touted how important he was to everything that they did. Before we go on to how free agency has affected the draft, let's hear from Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is awesome. As you know, Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. App is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. They discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. The second half of the basketball season is here. The race to the playoffs is heating up on Prize Picks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. So just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so let's get to moves in free agency impacting the draft. And I'll kick us off here with the New England Patriots. And we talked about this, we talked about it a lot heading into free agency. We talked about it in our free agency editions last week. But now, because of where the money got spent, which is to say, basically all on defense, which I don't fault them for, right? They went after Chris Godwin. He said no. They kicked the tires on all these tackles. Jalen Moore went to KC. Dan Moore, who went to Tennessee. They looked at inside guys, Will Freeze at guard, Drew Dahlman, Patrick McCarry, nothing. They either weren't willing to extend or those players weren't willing to come here, so they got shut out. And so now what happens is they went into free agency with a massive hole at left tackle, and not only a massive hole for a number one receiver, but you could argue a number 2. And guess what? They have now emerged out of this period of free agency with, at wide receiver, at least some veteran big names still available, a la Stephon Diggs coming off the torn ACL, Amari Cooper, who looked cash in Buffalo, Brandon Cooks, etc. But they're still in that place. And now when I look at the draft, which is 6 weeks away, not even
5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I feel as though they are locked in with those first 2 picks, 4 and 38, at left tackle and wide receiver. And yeah, you could maybe, again, they have 2/3, so maybe they could package one of the thirds with the second and move up to the back half of the first round again to get someone that they like there. But I think teams always talk about making picks in tandem, right? You look at who's available at 4, you look at who's available or you think is going to be available at 38, and you say, like, well, we need this and we need this. And the best route for that is what? Do we pick the left tackle first or we pick the wide receiver first, thinking we can get the left tackle second? But I think they are married to this now, where the hope was, I think, coming into free agency is something Mike Vrabel talked about. You wanted to be able to draft the best player available. Well, maybe these guys end up being the best players available at the time, but you're definitely more pigeonholed, Will, into the point where, I don't know, you're going back and looking at that Will Campbell tape and saying, can that guy with the 32 and 5/8 inch arms and the wingspan that's like 77 inches, which is absurdly low for a tackle, is the tape so good that we can do it? We trust it that he's going to be the outlier and truly a historical outlier at left tackle? Or is Ted or is Travis Hunter, do they view him as the wide receiver and say, like, no, that's the guy, we get him at 4, he's better than Campbell in terms of overall skill? And then with that second round pick, you either look up to get back into the first round, Josh Connolly, Josh Simmons from Ohio State, or you look at someone like Ursary from Minnesota at 38 and say, nope, we're comfortable with that, and we think that's an upgrade. But they're definitely almost like backed into a corner in that regard.
Yeah, I would say another team, and this will be mine, is very similar to top of the draft, Tennessee. Ton of investment in the offensive line. Moved Latham back. They obviously spent a ton in free agency. And it just feels like clear as day, it's Cam Ward at 1. We've got a lot of the reporting, from different people that, they're not really willing to move the first pick anymore at all. So it feels like, I'll keep this one short. This feels like it's starting Cam Ward at 1, and that's that. Like, we can kind of start to pencil that in. We've already been able to pencil it in. We can start to debate the dry ink at this point. And, we'll see what happens with Rodgers and Russ and Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston and then the carousel of quarterbacks with Pittsburgh and the Giants. But Cam Ward at 1 seems virtually a lock at this point.
Yeah, it's funny because when they had their press conference pre-combine and they were talking about, we're not going to pass on a generational player. So we looked at that and said, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. We didn't feel like Cam Ward fit into that sort of group. And then I think the more that people have studied Cam Ward, even though, again, he's not a perfect prospect, there is the feeling that if he was in last year's class, he'd have been in the conversation at 3 with Drake May, or maybe he's the 4, but that's a top 10 pick. And now in this draft, with their pressing need for quarterback, and look, again, this is what they signaled, right, with what they did in free agency. They signed Dan Moore at left tackle. So they're going to kick J.C. Latham, who they tried at left tackle, back to right tackle, which is where he played at Alabama. They signed Kevin Zeitler at guard. Zeitler, by the way, now up to $100 million in career earnings as a guard. Would never in a million years have believed that possible. And then they lose Mason Rudolph, but they signed Brandon Allen. So they have their backup quarterback, right? They have Will Levis. It's like, did you make all of these corrections up front to run Will Levis out there one more time? It just doesn't feel that way. It feels, like you said, it feels like it's Cam Ward, and forget about trading the pick. That's the player. That's the guy we need. And while there's new leadership in terms of Chad Brinker, Mike Borgonzi, all the other former GMs that they brought in, the head coach needs to win. So, does drafting Cam Ward help him get there? Does drafting Cam Ward buy him another year? Hey, you've given me the the rookie quarterback. Now let me work with him for a year. Let me show you that I can get him in the right direction. And then you feel responsible for me for year 3. So yeah, I totally agree with you now. I think Cam Ward, I don't know what the numbers are on at various betting sites, but I would guess they've gassed them up now, and it's going to be hard to find a profit because he's got to be the guy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My second one was going to be about the Bengals being forced to go defense. I will change that for the sake of
Variety's sake, yes.
Having some fun here. I think this is one that seems quite obvious as well, but I'm going to go with it. We'll keep this one short. The Chiefs are locked into having to take a tackle. And again, they'll probably be the Chiefs, and they'll like trade back and somehow not take a tackle and be fine. They obviously don't get Ronnie Stanley.
Jalen Moore, 2 years, $30 million.
Maybe. I think they have got to they're taking offensive linemen, I should say, in round 1. They didn't go out there and break the bank for Stanley. They didn't go out there and break the bank for, whoever, pick your poison. They feel like they're similar to Tennessee, like their lack of activity or lack of inactivity makes it seem like whether it's a Josh Connerly, as you mentioned a name like that, but maybe it's a Gray Zabel for them, where it's like, hey, you can play interior to replace, Tooney this year, and then, then we'll kick you out to tackle, the following year, whatever it may be. But to me, they are, based on the last 6 weeks since the Super Bowl, and then on top of just not getting, they didn't get 2-3 solidified starters there. I know they bring Trey Smith back. That's great. Got a whole left guard. You send a left tackle who I'm not sure any of us know if he's actually even a franchise guy at all. So yeah, I think Chiefs left tackle, or Chiefs offensive line, I should say, in general, is a pretty glaring one.
So they drafted Kingsley Suamataia in the 2nd round last year, started him at left tackle, went horribly, pulled the plug on it quick. That's how bad it was. There was a little inkling in training camp. They felt good about it, and then as soon as he got to real game action, he got exposed, and they never went back. We Morris, DJ Humphries finally kicking Joe Tooney out to left tackle. They never even went back to him. Now there's a lot of feeling that he's going to get kicked inside the left guard, and maybe that is what they're thinking at this point, or maybe that is oh man, he's not a tackle, and let's try to salvage a 2nd round pick, but we're not even sure he can do that. So I think I can't imagine that he would impede them from doing anything on their offensive line based on how last year went. So I definitely feel you there. And you could always make the argument for them too about the wide receiver position. There was a great tweet the other day when Juju Smith-Schuster re-signed. Juju caught 18 passes for the Chiefs, and the person that tweeted it, Jordan Schultz, cough. Patrick Mahomes gets one of his key weapons back. The dude caught 18 passes. What the hell are we doing? There's nothing key to it. They ran out of bodies there. He's a veteran. He knows the system. Great. He catches a pass a game, because no one covers him. And now we're talking about him being a key weapon. Ridiculous. So they could possibly, again, sort of, especially depending on how Rashee Rice is recovering from that knee injury, what direction they could go. But offensive line, protecting Patrick seems to make the most sense.
Game Time is just a terrific app. And if you're looking for tickets, the Game Time app is a great way to get Celtics tickets. Also, not just Celtic tickets, but also for concerts and shows as well. Plus, they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It'll filter out all the fluff, and it'll give you incredible deals on great seats right away. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets and thousands of websites. And then don't forget, they have the super deal with the Game Time app. The super deal is the best deal on the board at that particular time, so you can always make sure you're on the lookout for that. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Why, it's game time.
Let me give you one who, it's weird to say this, but I feel like Chicago at 10, I'm going to quote my aunt who's from New York, the world is their oyster, as she would say. Like, they've done so much in free agency and what they've done in the past with some of their roster build, where they're now at a point, I think, at 10 where they could go in a lot of that's where the Patriots wanted to be. Hard to do, couldn't do it, but now Chicago is, and you look at it. So they signed Drew Dalman at center, second highest contract ever given to a center in terms of guaranteed money. They obviously make the trades for both guards, Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. So they have solidified the interior of their offensive line, which was a massive problem for them. They signed Ola Zaccheaus, the Commanders receiver. He becomes their third receiver because Keenan Allen, who tried to bully Caleb Williams last year, he is no longer part of their plan. You slot him behind DJ Moore and Roma Dunze, who expect to get a bounce from this year. They're pretty set there. They signed, and I'm going to butcher his name. I had it like a week ago, and I don't have it now. Deo Odeyingbo, who's the Colts. I definitely got that wrong, by the way. Who was the Colts second-round pick a few years back. Had a really good season this year. Is finally healthy. 47 total pressures. So now they have their guy opposite Montez Sweat, which they've been searching for the last year and change. Traded up last year to get Austin Booker. Not writing off Austin Booker, the pass rusher from Kansas, but like need more. So now they sit there. Also got Grady Jarrett, right? So now they sit there and say, like, I don't know. Do you want to go running back here? Like, is this an Aston Genty spot? Is this Tet starts to fall and they say, let's throw more riches at, again, I don't think it's a huge area of need. Is this an Armand Membu spot, which they drafted Darnell Wright a couple years ago in the top 10, top 12, right? But do they look at Membu and say, he's just better? Like, it's a better player. And we can mess around with this. Maybe we can try right at left tackle. I just think they've given themselves so many different places where they can go right now, and that's a great place to be. And I think you could also be a team that could make the phone call on draft day because they see Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, or someone of that ilk start to slip a little bit and say, you know what, we'll go up there. We'll call the Patriots. We'll call Jacksonville. We'll see if we can maybe work our way into the top 5 because they have that sort of option. And again, we're talking about a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, so I'm making it like they have completely satisfied and have this full roster, but I would just say they've addressed enough of the places where now they can go to that best player available. And I think that's a good place to be if you're the Chicago Bears.
2 other shouts I would give is Mike Green and Will Johnson, 2 guys that are edge rusher and corner. I know they've invested a lot in the defense, but hey, Jalen Johnson, Will Johnson for the next couple of years, could that be something of interest, in a division with Jefferson and Addison and the whole 9 yards? And then, I just think from Mike Green perspective, like Montez Sweat's got paid a lot of money. I'm not sure he's worth what he gets paid. But do you need a second pass rusher there to be like, hey, they're desperate for looking for the pass rusher. They just always have been, can never invest enough there. And do they say, hey, like, we feel good enough about our offense and we'll figure it out. We'll take a running back. We'll take Amarian Hampton in round 2 if he even falls that far or whatever. But we want to get Mike Green now. Like that could be an interesting one as well.
Yeah, it definitely gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of how they approach this thing. Let me give you my next one, my last one for the pod here. I'm going to say Vegas because the trade for Geno Smith satisfies their need for a quarterback, which they have not had since Derek Carr. And we could argue whether Derek Carr was ever really the quarterback. And again, I think Geno's better than Derek Carr. I think Geno did some awesome work with Seattle with a just putrid offensive line. We've connected them a lot to Shedeur Sanders, right? And who knows where Shedeur goes? I'm still expecting him to go in the top 3 because I just think there's those teams up there. They all need quarterbacks, and I think one of them is going to convince themselves that Shedeur, whether it's the Browns or the Giants, is going to end up convincing themselves that they can make Shedeur into something. That maybe I'm not so clear that he is. So what happens at 6 now, if you're either freed of the Shedeur dilemma, because you have Geno for the next couple of years, I'm sure, as they work on that extension, they're in a place where, again, they haven't been a good football team for a couple of years here. But it also feels like it's given them some of that flexibility in terms of, okay, we have Christian Wilkins coming back off the injury. They just signed Crosby to the big deal. They have some pieces on defense. It's not great, but could you go corner there? Would Will Johnson be someone of interest at 6? again, Will's got to run. I think he's got to tell people that he has more speed than maybe some people are worried about. But also, again, give him the flexibility to say, do we go Membo here? If Will Campbell starts to fall into this range at 6, or even are they of the opinion that, hey, we could go back a few spots here. Maybe this is the place where Chicago trades up if someone they like is at 6, and Vegas goes back to 10, picks up a second rounder or maybe a third, and like just adds to their ability to sort of reshape the team quickly under Pete Carroll. Because as we know, Pete, not a young man. He said we're hitting the ground running. They're not playing this out like this is a 3 or 4 year plan. They're playing it out like we're trying to win right now. And Gino signals that. Some of the pieces they have on defense signal that. So now, like, how do you add to that? And how do you do it in the draft? I feel like there's a pretty blank canvas for them to go in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, I fully agree. Last one I'll go here. Obviously we're trying to narrow it down a little bit more. I would say like kind of we can do this with a million different teams, but
yes, for sure.
The Raiders were one, obviously, again, that was on my mind, 1000%. I think the Panthers are one that I feel pretty strongly it's one of Mason Graham, if he's there, Walker, Shamar Stewart, Mike Green. Like it's a pass rusher for me. They've really addressed like a majority of their other needs.
Yep.
There's obviously they're going to need to take another receiver, and that's no doubt about it. But like running backs really solidified. The back end of that secondary, they've locked up a lot of money in there. They've added linebackers. They've added offensive line help. They need to add another pass rusher. And so to me, short and sweet, Carolina is pencil in your flavor of the month, whether it's Mason Graham in your mock draft that gets there, they'll run up the card. If it's not Mason Graham, it's probably Shamar Stewart or Jalen Walker. Like that to me, maybe out Mike Green, like one of those 4 guys. I know it's like, it's got to be like they have to, and they need to continue to address that. And like, you got to help Bryce as much as you can, but I don't know if they're running in the cart. Maybe it's a Tyler Warren. Maybe they like, depending on what happens, if they want to.
As much as I like Tyler Warren, doesn't that just feels rich? Like even last year, we looked at Black Bowers, and granted, we discussed the photo of him next to Gronk, which colored a lot of people's opinions because he just physically doesn't measure up to him. He just had this historical season at tight end, and it's like, but would you have picked him earlier? Like I felt about it. He was one of the 10 best players in the draft, but picking him at 13 felt about right. I kind of feel the same way about Warren. Like he's going top 10. If he ended up with the Jets, like that would be a really good pick for the Jets. There's a couple spots.
It's like he's probably the odds-on favorite right now, I would say, to be that selection. But yeah, like you said, I just think for me, I feel his defense for them feels inevitable, and it feels pass rusher. So yeah, those are 3 for me: Chiefs, Panthers, and Titans, and then for you, obviously, Raiders, Patriots, and oh my God, I just blanked out, Bears. 6 teams that either made moves or did not in free agency, and obviously got a little Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, and Derek Stingley in there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of gulping elsewhere. Like it's not just the Sauce Gardner. Christian Gonzalez is a year away from being eligible for his extension, but if Christian Gonzalez has the same type of season this year under Mike Vrabel as he did last year, he'll be the next one to sort of push the market up even higher. It's just it's a good time to be an NFL football player if you get those guaranteed numbers locked down, right? For sure, which is pretty important in this league because you never know how long you'll last in this physical game. But it's the quarterback number has been eye-opening. I really I felt like it had been lagging for a few years, and now between what happened in free agency and what's happening with some of these extensions, yeah, it's a good place to be. A reminder to like, listen, subscribe, rate, review, do all those wonderful things for us. You get this podcast wherever you get any of your podcasts. Obviously, get them on YouTube as well, but we'd appreciate the support. Appreciate you getting the word out. Some nice people retweeted some of the stuff that we did this past week. Made some jokes about it. As I said, America was a winner, and they were debating whether or not America is a winner. But I was just talking about the Cowboys feuding, the DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons thing, but we appreciate that interaction. If you got something you're interested in, leave it in the comments. Maybe we can explore that at a later date. But he is Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. We will talk to you again later in the week on another edition of the All 32 Pod.
Over more than 2 decades and 2 separate dynasties, the Patriots defense has become synonymous with great linebacker play. Unfortunately, last season, key losses to both the coaching staff and roster left the unit vulnerable against both run and pass. Fortunately, new head coach Mike Vrabel and his staff have made one key move to the roster in one of their first moves of free agency that could be the difference maker and allow New England to get back to its winning ways at the second level. Christian Ellis was retained and could carve out a role on passing downs, but the Patriots first hinted at a stylistic change when they signed former Raider Robert Spillane. Now, Spillane mugging the line of scrimmage usually meant that he was going to drop into coverage, but as he showed against the Saints, he's also a pretty opportunistic pass rusher. The Saints match 6 potential rushers with 6 blockers, but the Raiders only send 4 players on a simulated or sim pressure. Despite having more blockers than Vegas has rushers, a twist from the linebackers in the middle makes Shane Lameau late to his block. This allows Spillane to catch Lameau off guard on a pick and get in Spencer Rattler's face on a high incompletion. Spillane would reach the quarterback one drive later, capitalizing on another missed assignment for an unblocked sack. Even when Spillane doesn't get to the quarterback, like any seasoned rusher, he knows he has to get his hands up. That instinct led to a game-changing drive stop during Week 2's upset in Baltimore. Facing 3rd and 5 down 7 points, Spillane rushes the left guard on an all-out blitz. He maintains vision on the quarterback after getting solid knockback, then sees Lamar Jackson wind up to throw and bats the pass. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to become a member of Patriots Press Pass on YouTube to get full access to videos like this and much more really fun content. I cannot wait for you to see it.